Hi, welcome to episode 3 of Just Covered. Here we are again in Coleman Street, where we're talking to some advisors in our intermediary world just around their views and opinions around financial protection in the full financial planning space. My name's Wayne Holcomb.
And he's joined by myself, Hazel Johnston, and today we are thrilled to be speaking to Nicola Crosbie. Nicola, I've been so excited to have you on. The minute I saw your LinkedIn and the kind of way that you describe your role as, you know, empowering clients and being a financial coach, really, it really caught my eye. So do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me today. I'm Nicola Crosbie. I run my own company, Moran Wealth Management. I'm a chartered financial planner. So I've been in the industry now for 24 years and advising for 18. So yeah, I do view it as a kind of a relationship with a client to help them make their own decisions. So we can give them the power to do that with our knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Because clients don't really know about this, do they? Until they come in and speak to you. You're quite often do you find that you're the first person to ever speak to them about financial planning? Or?
Yeah, quite possibly. I had a discussion about that yesterday, and it was saying that if a new client comes to you, what are they coming to you for? And sometimes they don't really know why they're coming to you, but somebody's maybe said to them that they take advice or they've got a planner. So it's your job to really unearth the reasons for that. Another common reason is they have a need, like they have a mortgage that they need protected or they want to retire. But generally it's they just feel they should be doing something about something because someone else is and they've mentioned it to them.
Sounds like a real USP. So how did you sort of come across that and how did it all begin for you in the industry?
It's been a long journey. So originally I studied architecture, but my father was, I would say, a real traditional financial advisor, Abbey Life. So I kind of knew about advice and did some admin just at weekends when I was at uni. So I really did know about the industry, but I wasn't attracted to it at all then. When you walked into their offices, it was just men sitting about with phone books, phoning to get clients. So it was very much not my kind of thing. So I left university having studied architecture, got my degree and really didn't really want to do it, but I tried for a year and I suppose my heart wasn't in it. So I really had to think about my future and I just didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. So 21, clueless is probably how I started. And then I fell pregnant and I really needed a job. So the default was to work for my dad and do his admin, which it felt like a real failure. But I thought, I probably could do this. And I kind of watched him and I thought he really was a real kind, helpful person. And he really focused on mortgage and protection and the need. But he just really kind of got to know his clients and became part of the family. And I thought, well, I like working with people. I like solving problems. Architecture is quite similar. You have a problem and you kind of find a solution. So I thought, well, it's quite similar, but I was quite keen to really make it a profession. I didn't want to be the salesperson like you'd seen at Abbey Life. I wanted to be a real kind of person of integrity and profession. And I had a lot of negativity for leaving architecture and giving up like a 5-year kind of training. So I thought, no, I can do something that will be just as good as that. So that was my kind of driver at the start.
I resonate with that so much. I mean, I've already mentioned start of my journey was in physio. I did physiotherapy at uni and I felt the exact same as you when I came into this industry, almost like I'd failed on my initial course of life and I almost fell into this industry by accident almost. I saw an opportunity to get a qualification in mortgages and I thought, oh, that sounds great. I'll go and do that. And then here I am a long time later. But isn't it funny that so many people come into the industry that way? It's almost like by accident. What more do you think we could be doing about that?
It's incredibly common because I did a master's degree and I did a dissertation. And one of the questions I asked people was, how did you get into the industry? And there was not one chose to be a financial advisor. I think it's education of the role. I don't think people really understand what you do. I think they think it's all about sales and products and numbers and not truly about relationships. So I think there's an education piece of how do you go from school age to being a financial advisor? Do you go to uni? Is there apprenticeships? Do you kind of do what I do and do a bit of admin and then go ahead and do some exams, or there needs to be a bit more structure around it, and maybe speaking to kids more about it. I went into my twins' school and for Maths Week and explained what my job was, and they were kind of all, oh right, so it's not just about the numbers. So I don't think they really kind of understand it, and I think there's probably a bit of negativity about the name still and the role.
Definitely. I was terrible at maths at school and ended up doing mortgages and financial planning and things. So it's definitely
it just shows,
interesting.
doesn't it? You know, later on in life, you never know what's around the corner. And do you think there's a preferred sort of pathway into the industry at all, Nicola?
Well, just now it's very common to go through the kind of academy structure, isn't it? But I personally think what's lacking there is the kind of education on soft skills and how you connect with a client and how you build that relationship quite quickly. So no, I think still people are falling into it and they're kind of getting to a point where they're qualified, but are they equipped to do the job? And I think as advisors, personally, I like the term financial planner more than financial advisor, because I think it kind of sets out that it's a relationship and a plan that we're working to. But I think we've got an obligation as planners to really help new entrants, whether they're younger or older, and pass on our kind of knowledge to them.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you keep mentioning, planning, relationship, life. How does that come into your role? You mentioned you think it's important, but how do you display that in your...
It's just entirely my role. So I spend time with people and I get to know them. I ask them questions, and I say that you might think, why is she asking these questions? To deepen the kind of relationship and the trust. I see the first meeting as just a meeting to understand if you like them and they like you, because there is people that don't connect in life. And I think as time has gone on, I have the confidence to admit where it's not working for either of us. We're not the right fit for one another. So if we really get on, then we start to move to what are the needs and the wants. But I think if you don't have that trust and build something with a client, then you can't actually get to the point where you can help them personally. So I'm at a good stage now where all my referrals come from clients to their family and friends. So I think they know what to expect when they come in. So maybe the process is a bit quicker now. But I think at the start of my career, it was just, I was interested in helping people. I did what I said I was going to do. I gave the right time scales. I didn't let them down. And you just built up that kind of rapport with people. And that was probably the things I didn't like about being a mortgage advisor, because it felt much more of a transaction. And doing that at the start of my career, I quickly realised I didn't want a transaction. I wanted to deepen the kind of offering to them.
Yeah, you're really walking the walk in terms of, we've got a session that we run through here in Hazel's team where it looks at trust. And there's so many different constituents and parts to that, isn't there? Reliability, so doing what you're saying you're going to do, getting on with people, being flexible to their situation, and a variety of other things. And the soft skills element of it that you mentioned earlier on, do you think that that's sort of, if you like, gone down in terms of our industry, do you think, in terms of the importance of that, or not? Is it...
I think there's more of an uprising, to be honest. I think people are becoming more aware that they need to have an approach that's genuine to them. My approach might not be right for everyone. It might seem disingenuous if someone else did that. So I think everyone has to find what works for them. I was discussing this with another advisor yesterday. We went to a meeting with him because he doesn't deal with kind of care issues, whereas I can. And he was there in his jumper and his trousers. And he looked really smart. And I take it you've not started wearing that suit. And I was just winding him up. And he said, I don't do that. And my clients know that. And I said, but that's right, not to do it if it doesn't work for you.
But
That's
he's
his
successful.
brand.
Yeah, he's successful. Yeah, he is. Whereas someone else, like I think of another advisor, he's always suited shirt tie because that works for him. But I remember at the start of my career, people telling me, and it was other females, to be honest, which was really tough to take, that I had to wear a suit. I had to act like a man. I would never survive in a male environment. And I just thought, but that isn't me. So I stuck to my guns and I just still wore the dress, still went to meetings semi-casual if that was what the client wanted. And I just feel that that's worked for me as being me. And probably I stood out a bit because I was a bit different to other people.
That's it. That's you. It's your brand. And people are drawn to a person a lot of the time, especially for this kind of. I think in our industry we can be so closed off to just a normal person sometimes because we're talking about something that they don't understand. So I think having that humanised approach and just seeming approachable definitely works. But you must have had to have quite a bit of resilience for that.
Yeah, I did a talk on resilience a few weeks ago. I think resilience is something I've got in bucket loads, if I'm honest. I've had quite a lot of hard things happen in my personal life that you just have to get through. But I don't know how you get through it. Somebody asked me that, and I think sometimes you have to just be a bit sad and have your downtime and then knock yourself up and get on with it. But I've always had a responsibility, which was a child at a young age, so I always knew I had to get back up and get on with it. But it's probably just the core of my personality, I think. But I do think it's a really hard job, and I don't think we talk enough about it. It's difficult, it's quite lonely. And if I can offer anything to anyone of my time that I didn't get at the start of my career, then I think if I could help someone, then I will help them.
That's lovely. And I definitely felt that when I reached out to you, say that I'd love you to come on here. You know, immediately you were warm and open. And I think if you're setting that example in the industry, then others will follow, you know, and hopefully our industry will become really connected and collaborative, really. Because the way I say it, the more we can grow consumer awareness on what we do, the more customers there'll be, and the more awareness of the value financial advice will be out there, won't it? So
I totally agree. I just believe as advisors we should all support one another and recognise there's different approaches, there's different solutions. But if we're better as an industry, then we'll have a better reputation to the public, which is better client outcomes, like you said.
Yeah, brilliant. The self-motivation, obviously, you know, you're demonstrating it is a lonely job, isn't it? Do you still think that the industry can be seen as highbrow and perceived to be difficult, you know, because the numbers association and all that type of thing?
Yeah, I think it still has that unapproachability, doesn't it, about it? I think clients often say, I don't even know what you do. What do you do? Can you explain your job? So I think there's a lot of education needs to be done about the role, the benefits, the value of advice. I think even new entrants coming into the career, they really need to understand the warts and sins and everything about the job so they understand if it suits them. Because there's people I've mentored that it doesn't suit them, the client-facing role, but there's many other jobs in financial services that they could do, that their skill set would be better suited to. And we need all those other roles as well. It's not just about the person at the front now, it's about the people in the background as well.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you know, collaborating with others who then approach you for some of the expertise if they've maybe not got an expertise in care, as an example. Do you find having that network is really important to you as a financial advisor? How do you utilise that?
I don't think it's been the main part of my business, but I think I've always made a point of trying to be as qualified as possible so that I've got the knowledge. If I think it's something I couldn't do, I would certainly pass it on to the person that could do it. But I just feel like if you don't do it, then they'll go and talk to someone else that does it. So if you have a connection or somebody feels they could pass something to you and you're a safe pair of hands, then you won't, you know, steal that client off them. So it's a really good way of kind of broadening your offering. If there's something you're not comfortable in, fine, somebody will be. You know, protection is the prime example, isn't it? People choose not to do it, but it's actually the real foundation of financial planning. So if you don't do it, and they talk to somebody else or something bad happens, then you've really lost a bit of credibility with that client, haven't you? And potentially you could lose that client or leave them in great risk if something bad happens, like a critical illness, for example.
So do you do all your protection yourself then? Do you try and do all that?
I do still, because I feel it's where I started. It's probably, I just think protection. I'm probably the most overprotected person on the planet.
Me too.
But I've seen many payouts, many claims. I've seen what it does to a family when they really need help. And I just think you can't beat that feeling of actually a claim paying out. You don't want that to happen to them, but you don't want to see them unprotected if it doesn't. So I kind of don't deal particularly well with clients that don't like protection. You know, I keep badgering them until they cover themselves.
So I'm really interested about, we mentioned it up front really, around the financial coaching element. Certainly something that you don't hear, I've not heard anyone else actually mention it. So where did that come about, and how does that manifest in the processes when you meet clients?
I think I've always done it, but it's now got a name. Does that make sense? And you've kind of identified that that's what you are actually doing, is you're coaching people. I just felt like it's a kind of running joke in the office when I come home. I'm like, oh, I've met this client and this is what's going on in their life. And they're like, how do you get that out of them in that short space of time? So I must have that kind of face that people like to tell things to, and they know it's a confidential space. There's no kind of fear of judgment. But I do really find clients tell me an awful lot about their life, and the more they tell me, the more I can help them, because you realise what a bearing something that's going on in their life is having on them. So I always felt I didn't want to be an advisor that was dictating what they did, and it was like a product just for the sake of it. So you feel by the time you get to that stage where they need a product, it's just a foregone conclusion. There's no kind of comeback on it. They know they need it, and you've solved the problem. So we've kind of went through, it sounds cheesy and I hate it, a journey together where they're on board with it. So it's, the clients that aren't going to work for you now, and you kind of know at the start, I don't think this is going to be a relationship that works both ways.
It feels like you're a sponge up front. A problem shared is a problem halved, and you've taken that on board for the customer to build that trust.
It can be quite difficult for you emotionally, though. I mean, there was one year where I had a lot of client deaths, and it was just really tough because you were quite close to them. So there has to be that way that I am a trusted friend, but I'm not the friend. I am a professional still. So it's trying to maintain that caring but slightly protected for you. To me, you're not your client's friend. You're the trusted person that they can speak to in confidence about things. I suppose there's a counselling element to it as well, isn't there?
There is, isn't there?
Yeah.
And interestingly so, if you've got that, that upfront trust where they're sharing all these problems or whatever, and you're just really connecting with them, some advisors would paint pictures, tell stories. Do you need to do that necessarily, or is it because the connection's so strong you can almost sort of suggest things, or what?
Yeah, I think we all use examples. I think it's a great tip in financial planning is you can maintain confidentiality, but you can certainly give examples of things that have happened, and so they don't feel alone. I also sometimes share things about myself because I think it makes me human as well. So I'm not opposed to kind of opening up, but I think when people know they're not alone and people are going through different things, they're much more open to discussing things. So yeah, we can give examples of reasons why you were doing things or why you would use this product. So they've got a bit more kind of, I don't know,
that,
sort of a kind of, they know they're not alone. There's people out there like them.
Yeah, it's
that does help.
Because we talk about, in the classroom, so to speak, about open questioning, but there's open sharing. It's like giving bits of yourself, which is what you obviously do, which helps with that connection.
It's a fine boundary because you've got to use, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you've got to use your ears to listen, and you've got to know when to step back. And I think sometimes that is an issue for planners, is we can talk about how good we are, how qualified we are, how great we are at our job, list what we do that's so good, but that's not really what clients are looking for. They assume that you're good at your job if you're doing your job, unless you do something to say that you're not or demonstrate that you're not. So you've got to sit and listen to them and really understand them. And once you understand them, you can then start to say, right, do they need me to do something quickly? Is this a slow one? I had this question yesterday. I feel that the advisor just keeps telling my parents to do things. Is that what you do? And I said, well, no, it's not what we do, but it is our job to point out the things they should be doing. It's not our job to force them to do it, but we have to remind people, you do realise if you're not doing that, this is a risk for you. But yeah, I think you have to listen to really get to know people and sit back and make sure that first meeting's about the client and not about you. So I mentioned I'm chartered, a fellow, and I've got a master's very late into a conversation, if I'm honest. And I do it more as a verification of this is why you would use me. Yeah. It's not a kind of, this is my badge and I'm better than you. And make them know, people, not product, is kind of what I say, it's about you, not the products. The products will come if we need them. It could be there's no products for you, but you'll remember how good a service I offered and you'll pass my name on to someone else, or you'll come back to me when you're ready to take some action.
Yeah. And when it comes to, you said that you started off obviously doing the admin, then you looked at, you mentioned you started doing a bit of protection. How did you actually go through that journey and build all the way
really
up to?
Difficult actually, because at that point there wasn't a lot of support for that kind of thing. So it felt like it was kicking and screaming and fighting to get to sort of what you would say like a CAS advisor now. there was a couple of people in my early career that kind of believed in me, and I think that's really important. They saw something in me. There was a couple that I think that thought if you moved you to the next level, you were going to fail. So that's a great driver as well. I mean, you don't
Prove them wrong.
Yeah, you prove them wrong. That's like a red rag to a bull with me. That's exactly what I need. But yeah, at the start it was very difficult because I'd done admin, I'd done a bit of the para planning in the background, I'd done a bit of practice management, but went off and did all your kind of levels 1, 2 and 3 then wasn't it? Exams. Yeah. And then it was like, right, we need to do 10 observed meetings if you want to be an advisor. We'll let you do mortgages and protection, which, to be honest, I found just a bit like one part, but not everything. But I thought, you all have to do. And then eventually it was like, we'll let you advise. We'll do some more observations and on your way. And that was
Not more
it.
observations.
Yeah, even more of them. I don't miss those.
I think it was, I still don't like them to this day, actually. I find them really nerve-wracking. But I think it was just a bit of making friends and speaking to people. And I think we discussed that earlier about the working from home. There's a lot of that. Asking, there was loads of administrators that had more knowledge than some of the advisors, asking them how they did things, what did they do. And then just really trial and error. I made a few mistakes, silly mistakes. I look back at now, I always remember I did a trust wrong and I thought it was like devastation. And I just went to the compliance and said, I think I've done this trust wrong. And she's like, it's fine, we'll sort it. You've made a mistake, So you do kind of learn from your mistakes.
And you'll never have made that mistake again because you got it wrong and you'll not forget it.
And I always double check trust for that reason.
Yeah.
So I think the support that's on offer now is loads. I think advisors are at the best point to get into advice if they want to. But I think that old school having to find out for yourself is also a bit lacking now. It's sort of there, but, networking within can be really helpful. Ask people who you can phone. Because I always say to younger advisors or anyone that's new, just phone if you want to ask. I could probably answer your question in about 5 minutes. Could save you a good hour of looking. And that's how I learned, I think.
I suppose the big question is, how do we get people to, say, your level in terms of that soft skills, that relationship sort of building and stuff, with all the research or information they've got available to them? How do we do that without having to go through the pathways that you went through?
Yeah, I think there's a real need for that someone to show them how to learn the soft skills. And I don't think that's something they can learn straight away. It maybe takes a bit of coaching of them. I think that mentor-mentee relationship is really important, but there isn't enough of us to go around, and not a lot of people want to do it. So it's something I do and I give up time to do. And even if I always get told if you took one thing from somebody said and tried it and kept on it, then you would learn. But I think there's a lack with that. Personally, I felt continuing on the qualification route was really important. I kept working towards chartered, working towards fellowship, because I felt the more knowledge I had, the more comfortable I felt. I kind of then looked at a client and they might have said something that rang an alarm bell and I thought I need to check that out, but at least I knew to check it out. So, and the more clients you get, the more business you do, the more people you see, the more your confidence kind of grows. But I would say it's only the last 5 years I felt truly at the top of my game. Does that make sense? And then for years I kind of didn't do any of this mentoring, probably because my kids were young, but now I feel it's my kind of responsibility to try and do a bit more of this to help other advisors.
And do you find when you're, mentor people now coming up through the industry, so you had a background in other products as well, so you can probably quite easily take that into your appointments. You said like protection to you is the foundations of financial planning right at the start. Yeah. Do you think that's really important for an advisor to have that experience or go straight into...
No, I think they should have that experience. Mm-hmm. I think protection is probably the most undersold thing in the marketplace. There's still that kind of misconception that claims don't pay out. I think, honestly, protection is an easy thing to sell if we're going back to being a sick, because ultimately you don't get paid if you don't have a product, do you? But I think if you just really take out the protection yourself, really understand it, take the time to go to all the webinars and the training sessions that you guys put on and learn. And it's great for cash flow. So the bigger investment cases, the pension transfers, all these things take time. So at the start of your career, I knew I needed cash flow. So it's a really good boost for that. But I think you have to make sure the client's on board with what you're selling them. You're not overselling them something they can't afford, because then you get kind of clawbacks and things like that. And that's what you don't want at the start of your career. So it's really selling what you think they can afford to pay and keep on the books. Then working on them for other things like the regular savings, like the pension consolidation. And then they become true clients once they've kind of got that next stage of product. But I think the fact that you've went in and helped them at the baseline, they'll remember that.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier when we were chatting, you said sometimes you have to have seen claim, you have to have had experience to really understand. And then you've mentioned that obviously there are some advisors who still maybe don't have full trust in the products. Have you got any like claims that really stick in your mind that you think, thank goodness I did that? Or
every claim I've had is stuck in my mind. And I've got a lady that actually came to me just now, and I'll not name the provider, but they are not paying out her husband's life cover claim. And I just thought to myself, she's came to me, she's went to a solicitor as well, and I said, you should have just went to the ombudsman when I came to me. So I'm kind of just coaching her through, because she wants to retire and she's invest her lump sum and all these kind of things. But she's very vulnerable right now, and it's thankfully she didn't need the money, right? Because he has death in service. But it's not the point, really, is it? But it kind of brought to light to me that they filled the form out themselves. I don't think they have been willfully negligent and not added in. I think they thought they've had it in. There was something on the medical report that they've been said they've non-disclosed. I honestly don't think they have even thought about this thing.
So there's quite a risk there of getting sometimes handing it off to that client and saying, right, I've sold the product now, on you go and do this part.
Yeah, I always do the forms for the client. Okay. And the reason I do that is because I don't even pass that part off to my team. It's something I've thought about over the years. But because I really will ask the minor details, and I'll put it on whether there's a question for it or not, on that other question. Because I think something like the online, it could be easy that it doesn't pre-populate the questions that you want. But I always say disclose everything. Just get it out there so that we know it will be paid out. So yeah, I've had one this year, which is I had a client who had issues with drugs many years ago, so it's probably not one we want to talk about. And he'd rehabilitated, and we could never get him covered ever. So eventually, as the years went on, he got life cover. Then we would try for a little bit of critical illness, and we got him up to 100,000 that he could afford. So I knew, hand on heart, they would pay out that claim if anything ever happened, because they went for so many medicals, so many GP reports, everything. He got prostate cancer this year. He is a friend's husband, and he's okay. He seems to be okay, but so far the prognosis is good. He paid for an operation in Germany using the money because he got his 100,000, and he was nervous. He's like, oh, my history. And I says, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Do you think that's the value of advice, though? And coming to an advisor and not just thinking, so-and-so on Facebook told me I might need this, I'll just go on and do it directly myself.
Well, if you do it directly yourself, the worry is you underprotect, you overprotect, you protect yourself with the wrong product, you don't fill the form out right, because that other example is a prime example. What I found really strange, recently I was on something, and another advisor, very qualified advisor, said, I would never want to do the protection form with a client. I'd rather eat tinfoil. And to me, I just looked at him and thought, what does that even mean? But I just shut my mouth and never said anything. But it resonated with me, because I think if somebody's okay to open up about health, then they're being really open with you, aren't they? And as you go on, you can go, oh yeah, I had another client who had something similar. Or if it's mental health issues, I've got mental health issues in my family, family members. So I can say, oh, it's such a tough, and you can kind of say it's really hard.
I used to find that I could relate when I was doing the medical forms. You'd see like some clients would be really sheepish and get really ashamed of answering certain things, and mental health being one of them. It's only going to get more and more common. But I was able to say, I'm so sorry you're going through that. It's really tough. Like I've had experience family too. Yeah. And then they were so close to you. So the next time their mortgage was due for renewal or they needed something, they came straight back, because they were like, we know that advisor cares, like she understands. And it really gives, going back to that relationship building, gives that channel, doesn't it?
Big thing about hidden vulnerabilities, isn't there? I mean, there's a lot of kind of FCA kind of spotlight on that as well. And to me, vulnerability isn't just bereavement or illness or age. It's so much broader than that. And I do generally attract people who are going through very difficult situations, and I think it is because of that. But I do think the health application gives you a real opportunity to learn a lot more about them and to kind of unearth if there might be some potential vulnerabilities that maybe they're masking. You know, even the most put together person can have issues, can't they, when you actually get kind of scratch the surface.
Maybe it's around belief that people do want to open up, because sometimes I suppose you could think as an advisor, the customer may not want to talk to me about those types of things, but obviously they do.
Very rare. And sometimes you get the situation where there's two and you know something's not quite there. And then afterwards they might phone and say, I'm really sorry, we're actually struggling in our relationship. We're thinking about getting a divorce, or my partner's actually not really that well just now. So they maybe can't say in that meeting for some reason, but they want to give you some kind of context afterwards. So yeah, I mean, to us, it's all confidential. I share these things with the office so that they're aware when people phone of how maybe to deal with things. You know, like I've got a lady whose memory's not quite as good as it once was. So, you know, I'm trying to speak to her family about that, just to say I think maybe she needs some kind of extra support. It's a very delicate one, but just if she phones in, just be kind of mindful of that.
You're being very inclusive. That's the way I'm seeing this. You're very inclusive to everyone, and you're thinking, well, I don't want there to be a barrier from anyone receiving good financial advice. So that's the way I see it, that you're making it easy for those who probably need it most.
Yeah,
to actually
initially
come and
I
work
focused
with
on
you.
kind of wanting to make sure females took advice, but after I did the research and the masters, I realised there was an issue with all kind of minorities as such. You know, I think, well, like the LGBTQ community particularly, I've got like my oldest falls into that category. So you kind of think for them as well. And that's only kind of coming into my head now as I'm going through that. And you're going, there's actually real issues with all sorts of diversity. And I was speaking to an advisor yesterday, and he says, but that's changing. And I was like, yes, it is, but it's not changing at any great speed. Because I believe if we had a diverse advisor population, it would be more approachable, and people would actually think, well, I could take advice off somebody that's, and I'm going to generalise here, but the population of advice is mostly older, and it's still male, isn't it? So it's kind of white male. So, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's what it was, and I'm not saying we have to change that entirely. But it would be good to have something that's a bit more reflective, because I think people would then relate more. I spoke to a consultant actually, Carla Langley, the other week, and she said her thing is she doesn't feel there's a lot of Northern or Scottish or Welsh advisors.
There's not many of us, really.
So she said, I feel like from council house background, because when we were talking, I was like, well, that's my background. She went, oh, it's so refreshing. She said, that's my thing. I want to get like more inclusive of all kind of social classes as well.
I totally agree with you. I'm council house background completely, you know, one parent family, and, you know, no one in my family come into this industry.
Yeah, or took advice,
you know, so I totally agree. And that inclusivity thing that you're demonstrating and you're sort of, I suppose, playing the trumpet about it is completely so important. And that you were talking about the vulnerability and it's almost like making sure it's the right outcome and making sure people don't come to harm, avoiding foreseeable harm, as the FCA are calling it at the moment.
Yeah,
for
I would
consumer
much
duty and
rather they
stuff.
came to me than someone else if they need advice. But it's trying to get that vulnerability should be at the heart of everything. You know, we're all vulnerable at different points in our life, me included. So it's, you want to know if you were at a serious point in that somebody would treat you properly, wouldn't it?
Of course, well, definitely. And in terms of that, the bigger population, you're saying you would want to mentor and help advisors come into the industry. Are there any things that you would say they should think about before they make that decision, you know?
I think they need to talk to people who do the job. I think they really need to understand everything about the job and make sure they've got the right impression of it, what it actually is. Because, as I say, if they're real numbers people, that might not actually be the job for them if they don't have the social skills. So it's a real combination of, I do believe we need to become more technical as an industry and we need to become more qualified, but we need to also be approachable people, trustworthy, able to build relationships quite quickly, and authentic relationships, not just on a kind of false basis, so deeper relationships. So it's make sure you understand what the role involves. don't be, if you're going to one of the academies, don't just be sold the story that they want to tell you. It's a brilliant industry to be in. It's growing. I don't think it would be a bad decision, but I think there's generally a person that fits better than others. I think there's a big gap for more introverted advisors as well. You know, like we're probably as an industry quite an extroverted bunch, aren't we? So the quiet people will meet the quiet clients, or the kind of ones that, you know, they're not shouting the loudest will have their market as well. So
almost needs to be an advisor for everyone, doesn't there?
Exactly.
That's what I'm hearing from this.
And those that want to interact more digitally. You know, as
there's a place for that as well.
As the industry moves along, there's more digital solutions that are going to come along to help, isn't there?
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's the consumer duty next year is about being more adaptive to the client, isn't it? So, well, it'll come in this year actually, won't it? So it's been adaptive anyway. So being bespoke to the client. So what I've learned, big lesson post-pandemic. I mean, I did everything face-to-face pre-pandemic. I'm a face-to-face advisor. That's what I do. I jump in the car, I drive, I travel. That's really tough when you've got 3 kids. So the pandemic was scary. Thankfully, I think we all foresaw it in the office. We're good with IT. We had the setups there to work from home. So that wasn't threatening as such. I don't think we thought it would last so long. But initially, I was scared of Zoom and Teams. I'm going to put it out there. I was not used to it. I get my way around a computer, I know what to do, but I need to learn a new software, and I needed to go on webinars and learn how to use it. So initially I just said, phone all the clients, check they're all right, check if they need anything. You know, we've got clients that live alone. Have they got food? Are they getting what they need? So basically the team just sat. I said, because I won't have time to phone everyone. We just sat with a list and allocated it out. Then in the background, I'm going, right, we need to work out how to transact business. And really, we didn't do any business really for 3 or 4 months because people just didn't have the cognitive function to make a decision. So that's fine. It wasn't great for the business, but it was the right thing to do because it would have pressurised them into making a decision when they weren't ready. During that time, we got really up on Teams and Zoom and we worked out what to do. And then going forward, we just offered that and we put new clients on the books and everything during that time. But what I would say now is we offer a varied service. It's whatever suits. So I don't want to be out every day if I don't need to be. If a younger client is quite happy to do Zoom or Teams, we'll do Zoom or Teams. You know, if they want more phone check-ins, we'll do that too. So we've really adapted our service, I think, and trying to work out what works for everyone a bit more.
That's amazing. And just, I don't know if you're getting this,
so
Hazel,
lovely.
but or what I'm getting such a warm feeling from talking to you at first. The flexibility of the service, what you do for your clients, you're checking they're all right, making they've got enough food. You know, the one thing that's coming across is you care.
I do care about my clients, but my clients have built my business. I wouldn't have a business without the clients, and that's what you've always got to remember. It's like I don't lose clients and natural loss, but I've usually kind of got the family or the partner as a client as well. So the natural movement is to just stay with you. So, but I see that as a retention tool. It's just as important to retain your business as it is to acquire new business. And I think as an industry, we forget that, you know, the kind of ongoing advice that you're paying for, they need to get something for that. It's not just an empty payment, is it?
It's all that. I mean, there's a lot in the spotlight at the minute on that intergenerational wealth and making sure it's a full family. It's not just that individual sat in front of you, isn't there? And when you're talking about the impact of COVID, and obviously that really digitised your business, and you had to rethink all of that. How have you seen the customer mindset change, especially if we are looking at things like vulnerability protection, those kind of products?
Yeah, I think they're all open to it changing. I think with some clients it's offered more touch points, like the clients, I do have clients all over the UK. So like one next week, she's in Chester and we'll just do a Zoom. So you're seeing more of them almost. I mean, they're inviting me to their wedding. So that just shows that kind of how deep the relationship is. But yeah, I think generally your older clients still want the face-to-face. They still want 2 hours of your time. You know that, so you put it in your diary. They want to, like yesterday I had lunch with my elderly client and she always makes a great lunch, so it's a privilege really, to be honest. But you know that that's 2 hours of your time. But she's one of my best clients, so it becomes a kind of mix between social and what's profitable. And I think the mindset needs to change from it's not just all about new business. I go into a meeting and I think, well, is there business to have? Is it a referral to get? Or are you just stabilising the business that you've got? And there's 3 outcomes of that, isn't it? By going to a review meeting and seeing your clients regularly, you're getting one of those 3 things from it. And you'll always get some clients just don't refer. And it's not because they're not happy because you ask them. It's because they're just not that way inclined. But then you get probably a couple of handfuls of clients who refer all your business because that's what they are like. They're real advocates for you.
Yeah. And do you think there's a risk there then? I mean, this might be a little bit repetition, but a risk there that if you feel you've not done it, ticked every box for that client in terms of we've covered this risk, we've gone through these processes. And you said earlier you feel you sometimes badger clients to come back in and be covered. But do you feel that there is a risk that they won't be retained if you've not given them that full service and chance?
I think you open yourself up to risk. And I think as an industry, we're quite egotistical and we think we're the best advisors in the world. We're not. There could be just as equally a good advisor as you out there. So all it takes is somebody to have a discussion with somebody and they point out something that you've not, and then you lose credibility. So I think we have to remember that a client is only a client for as long as you're looking after them. They can move. Their loyalties can change. I mean, so if you don't offer something or have somebody or put them in touch with a solicitor for a will or a power of attorney, all these kind of basic things, then you run the risk and you may still lose clients. I mean, we're not perfect and something can happen. And sometimes they're better fitted somewhere else. But I think to me, the protection of the business on the books is just as important for the running of my business, like for paying for my staff and securing their employment. The new business is more about my part of the profit, really. So to me, it's just making sure the business runs properly.
It's absolutely amazing. And on any given day, if you like, what are the basics you think you would do on every day, solidly every day? Is there like a blueprint process that you use that you always do?
I post-COVID had incredibly strict diary management. I think it slipped a lot in COVID with homeschooling and just trying to just get everybody did. So this year has been trying to get back that structure in your week. So I much prefer, I'm if I did a personality test, I'm on kind of the real fine line between extrovert and introvert. And people don't really understand that about me. So when I need to get things done, I need to just be in a quiet space working away. So I like to have client-facing days and non-client-facing days. And when I'm in the client zone, I'm in chat. I suppose you're being charismatic. You know, you're listening. It takes a lot out of you. So I prefer to have 2 or 3 days doing that and 2 or 3 days doing the back office stuff.
So you have like your stage days.
Yeah,
so charging your batteries in the background.
So personally, an ideal week for me would be Monday, Friday. I would work from home. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'd be client facing. Probably one of those days in my office. Maybe one day doing Zoom meetings or Teams meetings, and one day maybe out and about seeing clients. So I'm trying to limit my travelling now to kind of all in one day because I find traffic is now just annoys me and. I'm not the best timekeeper. It is one of my worst habits, but it's generally because I'm trying to fit too much into a day. So I kind of think if I'm in that zone, it limits my stress and then I kind of mop up what I need to do and get over to the office in between. So, but my thing is when you first start, you don't have admin support. You're doing everything yourself. So it's trying to work it. Some people might be better working half days or having bigger gaps between meetings. Find your own structure and what works. I'm lucky enough now to have a really good team behind me. So if I feel I can get something action point from that meeting, because I like to go into every client meeting and have an action point, even if it's something stupid like, have you looked at getting a better savings interest on that bank account? Let me have a little look and see what's out there for you and I'll drop you an email. I feel that then I've added value to that meeting and they've had something back out of that meeting. So if I can get any action points back to the team as quickly as possible, then I've handed responsibility over to someone else and I can move on to the next thing.
Yeah. You've galvanised that trust, haven't you?
Yeah. They kind of, I like them to just touch in and tell me they've done it because then I know it's done. But yeah, to me, it's getting into different zones works for me.
Great. That's been brilliant. I guess to summarise, is there any? Well, I've learned so much about how the business runs and what good practice looks like. But is there any one piece of advice that you would say is essential for any advisor?
I think it's just building your confidence. If you become confident in your skills and your ability, I think I suffered from imposter syndrome really badly until about 5 years ago. And then one day I woke up and I thought, I'm as good as everyone in this room, if not better. And then you've got to remember that, because the confidence really comes back through to the client and they don't question your advice. They know that they're in safe hands. So finding what will help you get to that level where you feel confident. And I think for me, it was working on a variety of different things, really pushing my knowledge, really building those deep relationships with clients, and pushing my boundaries, finding things that were hard to do, finding out how to do them. And then one day you go, actually, I'm like probably at the top of my game now. And I've worked hard and I'm going to enjoy it now. So, but you have to keep learning. So it's finding different things to do. So right now I am working on formalising the financial coach qualification with the money panel, Catherine Morgan. I always do something every year. Like I did AF7 this year because I work
saw
in
on
the
your
DB.
LinkedIn. Congratulations.
So I didn't need to do that. I
Yeah.
have AF3, but I felt I needed to do it for me just to kind of really, if I got my head around this, because it's a risky market to work in, am I going to open myself up to risk? So to me, it's continuous learning gives me the confidence, but that might not be the case for someone else. It might be something that they find is what works for them. So find the thing that builds your confidence and then you become a better advisor, I think.
Thank you so much. I mean, just being so candid in a variety of areas.
I'm a very honest
Just
person.
It's just fantastic, isn't it?
That's been great. Thank you so much, Nicola. It's been lovely having you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nicola. Really appreciate it.